I'll never forget the day I decided to quit being a therapist. Going into therapy was my dream. My ultimate dream was to study psychology at Berkeley, get my master's at USC, but everything changed when I got into such a toxic work environment. And after 4 years of undergrad, 2 years of a master's, 3,000 supervised hours, I got licensed and then I quit. I don't know if you've ever had that experience, if you've worked in a place that felt so toxic that you're like, there's no choice but to leave. It was interesting to see the different environments that I worked in over time and just how much the setting you're working in and the people you work with can make such a difference of loving your job versus hating your job. But I ended up in such a toxic treatment environment that it led me to wanting to quit therapy. That being said, I don't regret leaving therapy. I think it was the right decision for me. I learned so much along the way, and there's so many lessons and takeaways from having gone through that experience. And today I want to share with you the good and the bad and all of the reasons why I ended up leaving therapy and going into coaching. I ended up getting my master's in marriage and family therapy from USC, and when I was there, it kind of already started me questioning things about the field just based on some of the experiences that I had. My first job was working in IOP, which is intensive outpatient, and it was a substance use and dual diagnosis program. This treatment center was one of my favorite experiences working as a therapist. The clients there were so amazing. They were so open to receiving help. I learned so much, and it just felt like the coolest experience. I was getting to know the most interesting people who were so grateful for the help and support, and I just felt like I was exactly where I was supposed to be. I was in the career I was supposed to be in, and I was so excited and optimistic. But then I got the harsh reality of some of the negative parts of being a therapist. Some of the things that shocked me the most was the instability of treatment centers. One place shut down a couple months after me being there. I had, I think within a year, one time, like 3 or 4 different jobs. So I didn't feel like I had that sense of security with work, which wasn't a great feeling. But more than that, everything really changed once I landed at this treatment center in Newport Beach. I eventually started to understand the downside to the field, how toxic some work environments can be, which honestly shocked me because when I went into the field, I was like, okay, everyone's here, they're therapists, they're helping people, it's going to be a bunch of really nice, great, supportive people. And that wasn't always the case. It was one of the most toxic work environments I've ever experienced, and it really left me disillusioned, burnt out, and reconsidering my entire career trajectory. I didn't have the best supervisor at the time either. I walked into a room once and saw everybody talking about another employee. If you've ever had a toxic work environment, you probably know this. The people that you work with and the environment makes or breaks your experience. It's the difference between loving your job and being excited to go in every day and hating your job and being completely burnt out. This work environment was definitely the latter. It was not a great work environment. It got me rethinking everything about the field. I realized that the environment I was in didn't align with what was truly important to me. It didn't align with why I got into the field in the first place and what I actually wanted to do to help people. The settings that I was working in was more severe than other places. Like if I worked in private practice, I think I would have had a very different experience because I would have been helping people through situations that maybe were a little bit less heavy, less intense, and who knows, maybe I would have stayed in the field after. But going into it, being a little naive to the severity of what I was going to deal with, and then to see so much dysfunction, it was something that I didn't necessarily know what I was stepping into or signing up for when it comes to more severe mental health. I was in an environment where emotional highs were so high and so low and so chaotic all the time. It started to take a toll on me. I had to learn a lot about boundaries. I had to learn a lot about how to deal with certain emotional crises and stay calm within myself because I hadn't been around so much chaos. And every session that was coming in, it was always crisis. There was always something major going on, and it left me feeling so depleted. I started to see the therapeutic environment and the settings that I was working in, rather than being a place where it was positive and meant for growth and people actually creating change, I was starting to realize the amount of dysfunction that was here, where people would come in and they would want to stay in their depression because that felt so comfortable, or keep reliving the traumatic experiences that they were having. And being surrounded by that all day, where I was trying to be healthy and happy myself, I did feel like it started to take a toll on me. And I started to reflect and really think about, like, why did I go into the field? What is it that I want to be helping people with? And what's actually in alignment with me and what feels good to me? In grad school, they warned us so many times about burnout and the importance of self-care, but I don't think anything actually prepares you for it until you're in the middle of it. I will never forget clients yelling at me, slamming doors, hours, verbally attacking me. A lot of things that I didn't ever anticipate going into the field, and now having had these experiences, it makes sense to me. It's like these are people who needed a lot of support and help and who didn't learn how to manage or regulate their emotions at all. So now it's adults who are acting out and yelling and screaming and upset. I personally wasn't prepared for it. And like one day I was sitting in my office in between sessions and I just had a client completely yell at me, scream. I was de-escalating the situation, but I just thought to myself, why would anyone choose this? Why would a healthy person who's happy and wants to live a positive, happy life surround themselves with dysfunction all day? And it was such an interesting idea to sit with because I'd gone into the field wanting to help people propel their lives forward into a more positive place. And I realized so much of what I was doing was helping people pick apart dysfunction and dysfunctional things that they were going through, and depression and trauma and all of this stuff from the past and from their whole lives up until today. And I realized that what I went into the field wanting to do and help people wasn't aligning with the help that these particular clients needed. So I was sitting there just realizing the dichotomy of like what I wanted to do versus what I am doing. And I was like, something needs to change. From the time I realized this to the time I actually decided to go into coaching was probably maybe like a year or a year and a half, because it took me so long to sit there with this and think, is this the right choice? Is coaching as great of a title as therapist? Like all of these surface level things that don't actually matter went through my mind. It helped me realize just how much my identity was tied up in being a therapist and going to these prestigious schools that don't actually matter. Looking back at USC, there's a lot of stuff I didn't like about that program. There's a lot of things that I didn't agree with, but there's something that people respect about hearing that title. It really made me reflect on what actually matters to me, the surface level stuff that doesn't matter. Who cares what school you went to? Who cares the job title? I started to get down to the things that actually matter to me and really reevaluated my values and what value system I was operating under. Because to me, being fulfilled, living a life that's positive and happy, those are things that I genuinely value and they make me so much happier. I'd much rather do that than have a job title that other people are going to have a positive reaction to. Like those things just don't matter. This helped me realize how important it is to get so clear on your values and making sure that you're living in alignment with them, because if something's out of place or something's off, it's only going to creep up and get louder and louder. That little voice in your head that's going to say, hey, you're not happy right now. It doesn't go away. It just comes out in new ways. Once I decided to leave the field, it was the biggest relief I think I've ever had. It just felt like freedom. I started seeing other people that took my path that became a therapist and then switched into coaching. And I started exploring this. I think it took me about 2 years before I finally took the leap. And if you've ever thought about leaving a career or leaving a job and you've had that internal dialogue and discussion with yourself where you're like, I want to leave, but do I leave? And this is what I know, and this is familiar, and this is comfortable. And also so much of my identity was wrapped up at the time in what I had worked so hard towards. Because if you think about it, how we share who we are to people, we share it based on what we're doing, how we define ourselves, like, oh, I'm in school, I'm working here, I'm a therapist, I'm whatever it is. I didn't realize at the time how much of my confidence and self-worth and everything came from the career that I had chosen. So when I was starting to think about changing this, I had this whole internal conflict and shift of like, how do I align what I'm doing each day and how I help people with what actually feels authentic? And I didn't know, obviously, like what a new path was going to look like because it was the unknown and unfamiliar. And our bodies and minds are trained to keep us safe. And even if we're in a situation that doesn't feel great, it's familiar, and familiarity is safe. What gave me the courage to leave this job was knowing that I didn't have the time to study and get licensed. I wanted to get licensed because regardless of if I stayed in the field or not, I had spent pretty much 10 years, maybe more than 10 years at this time, working towards becoming a licensed therapist. And so I wanted to see that through. So I took the plunge and I quit so that I'd have the time to study. And in this time, I felt like a new person. I had time to decompress. I had time to get to know myself again. I had time to work out again. I had time to do the things that genuinely lifted me up. And the thought of going back into an environment with so much chaos and toxicity, I'm like, my body had a visceral reaction to that where I was like, I genuinely cannot go back to this because this isn't good for me or my health or well-being. This was one of the most monumental experiences that I've had to shape me and who I am, in finding my voice and being able to speak up for myself, to set limits, to be a stronger person. I would never go back in time and change any of the experiences that I've had because it shaped me into who I am today. I'm so grateful for these experiences because it taught me so much more about the importance of finding yourself. It taught me about the importance of not just identifying as a job. Jobs can go tomorrow. You need to find who you are at the core, align with that, and be your true self in all of the different areas of your life and honor your needs, because if you don't do that, you are going to end up feeling so depleted and so stuck and so burnt out. Going through this experience, becoming a therapist, putting 10 years plus into my own self-growth and development changed me so much, and it to this day still influences how I show up and help people because it's taught me so much about the process of change, about growth, and it helped me get to know myself so much better and what is truly important to me and what I value.